All right, we are going to start this on Dav Vav Amid Beis and go through Dav Zayin Amid Beis. Here we go. We're 7 lines down. Frek the Gemara. Va'ach atam afrisha mitumas beisai. Why are you so concerned about being that you're so concerned about Tumas Beisai, there's a chashash that Kangal is going to be Bail Ishtay, and she'll be a Savik Nida, and he won't be able to do the Avoida, which is fine, but Hefrisha B'Tumas Beis. What are all the people that are coming into his room? Maybe one of them was going to die, and they become Tamei Meis. So let's keep him away from people. Zag the Gemara, Amrav Tachliva Avua de Ravhuna, Mishmei de Rava. Zeisei Meres, Tumas Hameis Hutra Hi Bitzibur. Tumas Meis is Hutra Bitzibur. That means, take a look at Rashi to the left. Hutra Hi Bitzibur, Kiddichsiv. The drasha comes from a pasuk of Ish. You know what? Let's take a look at the top Rashi on the next page, on Zayin Ralph. The Kol Tumas Meis Bitzibur Shari Rachmana, Dichsiv. Ish Kiyiye Tomei. A man that will be Tamei Lenefesh, will be Tamei Meis. Yasa Pesach Sheni. He makes Pesach Sheni. Says the Gemara, Ish nitche Pesach Sheni. One person will be pushed off to Pesach Sheni. Ve'ein tzibur nitchen. A tzibur is not nitche to Pesach Sheni. Aval zavnu mitzer nidas v'yolda is shenitmu shetum asa yoytze lav migufay. But a tumah that's yoytze migufay, like a nida, or a yeladas mitzer zav. Loy hutra does not have the heter of tum hutra b'tzibur. Ubayel nida is kenida. Okay, so that is why we are concerned for Tumas Beisai, but we're not concerned for Tumas Meis because Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. Now you'll say, yeah, but this is just one Kayin Gadol. Why is this called Hutra B'Tzibur? Oh, now back to the Rashi we started before. Hutra Hi B'Tzibur. Kedechsev Ish Nitche Ve'ein Tzibur Nitche. Like the pasuk says, Ish. That's the pasuk we just saw by Pesach Sheni. And Ish is Nitche Ve'ein Tzibur Nitche. U'b'Yom Kulei Carbon Tzibur. On Yom Kippur, everything's a carbon tzibur because he's doing the avodah for the tzibur. Va'af carbon shaloi, and even his personal carbon, like the par in the aisle, deicha atuma sheizmane kavur v'karbonei toli boy. It's a zman kavur as a set time. The karbonei toli boy and the avodah of Yom Kippur is totally on his carbon, at least the par. Okay, so that explains why we're choshish for tumas beisei and we're not concerned for tumas hames. Says the Gemara, that's very good if you hold Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. Ravina Amar, Afilu Tema Tumas Hameis D'chuya B'Tzibur. Even if you hold it's not Hutra, it's just D'chuya, it's pushed off. That means it's like B'diavad. We'd rather do it, find another way to do it. And therefore, if it was D'chuya B'Tzibur, says Rashi, Apal Pisha Carbon Tzibur Doicha. True that a carbon tzibur will push it off, but B'Koishi Hutra, it's just bekoshi. V'lei heter gomer. This is not a complete heter. V'chol ma'ad matzinu lahadurei mahadrin shasa b'tahara, and you'll do whatever you can to do it with b'tahara. So the chayv, if it's only dechuya, so then we should take precautions. Says the Gemara. Says Ravina mafil tem tumas hamez. Dechuya b'tzibur tumas hamez leishchicha. That's not common. Tumas beisay shchicha. Tumas hamez is not shchicha. Tumas beisay is shchicha. Now, that's an interesting nakuda because everybody dies. The fact that someone's going to die on you in your room, he's going to come into the lishkas parhedrin where the Kohen Gadol is, and he's going to die. We'll say that's leishchicha. But being bail ishtai and she being a savig nida is considered shchiach. Okay, you got a yesh ladan on that one, but that's what Ravina says. Now, the Gemara now is going to go into a nice blad Gemara in this machlokes of Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur and Tumah D'chuya B'Tzibur. And I want to point out that there are two things that you got to keep in mind. There's when the person himself becomes Tamei, and the makar for that is from Pesach Sheni. That's where the person became Tamei Meis. So there's a shayla of Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. That we learn from there that Tumah is Hutra or Tumah D'chuya B'Tzibur. There's another scenario where the Kayin is Tahar, but the carbon becomes Tamei. The dam he needs to sprinkle, or the mincha that he needs to bring becomes Tamei. And there's also a Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur, and that's learned out as a different source. We'll see Tesis later on from from the Ma'idim, from the Parsha Ma'idim. Okay, let's see the Hilgi Gemara. Itmar, we learned in the Memra, Tumas HaMeis. When it comes to Tumas HaMeis, person being Tamei Meis, Rav Nachman Amar Hutrahi B'tzibur, it is permitted B'tzibur. You don't need to go find another Eitzah. Rav Sheshes Amar Dechuyihi B'tzibur. It's Dechuya, and therefore you got to find another Eitzah. Unless there's no other Eitzah, then you're allowed to do it B'tumah. Says the Gemara, Heichad Ikat Hamein Utaharin Bahu Beisav. In the scenario where you have again, the Kahanim were divided into 24 mishmaris, and each mishmar was divided into 7 Beis Av, and each one worked a different day of the week. So let's say it was Wednesday, and Wednesday's Beis Av was due to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and some of that Beis Av is Tamei, and some of them are Tahar. So everybody agrees, Kuli Amalei Pligi, the Tahar and Avdi, Tamei and Avdi. So let the people that are Tahar work, and the people that are Tamei, they won't work. So where's the machlekes? Let's say everybody on Wednesday's Beis Av is Tamei. Do you go now and bring Thursday's Beis Av to work in their place? Rav Nachman Amar Heter hu b'tzibur. This is a heter. Why is this b'tzibur? Because they're working on the tamidim of the tzibur. Well, you don't have to go find somebody else. Rav Sheshes Amar Dechuyihi b'tzibur. It is Dechuya, and therefore Mahadrinan, you got to go find other Kahanim to serve. That's the first way to understand the Machlekas, Rav Huna and Rav Sheshes. Even the same Beisav, you have to main and Tahirin. If Nachman, Apollo of Nachman, V'amar Avdi, Nami Tamein. The Tamein are allowed to work. The Kol Tumas Meis B'tzibur. Whenever we're dealing with a Tzibur, Rachmana Shari. The Torah permitted it, and you don't have to find people that are specifically tahar. That's wild. So this guy who's Tamei Meis is going to go do that Vaida in the Beis Hamikdash, even though there are other Kahanim that can do it in his place, because Tuma Hutra B'tzibur. Wow. Now, oh man. Hello.
החשבון הקולי של 0, 5, 0, 4, 1, 6, 5, 8, 6, 8, להישמע ואילניה של הודעה. מצטערים, אך אין עובר מקום להקלטת הודעות.
Okay. What's the machlekes between Rav Sheshes and Rav Nachman? Tuma Hutra B'tzibur or Tuma Dechuya B'tzibur? So one way to look at it is like this: when we're talking about doing the avodah b'tuma, is it just an iser that we're involved in, or is it doing the carbon b'tuma passel the carbon? If you hold tuma dechuyahi b'tzibur, the word is you hold that there's an iser. That's all there is. There's just an iser. So memela, if you don't want to be over the iser, so you can do it in a different way. If you hold it, but if you hold that there's an issue with the carbon here, So you need something that's going to take away that problem with the carbon. So you need tumah to be hutra b'tzibur. Right? If it's hutra, that means there's no pagam here. If you hold that there's never a pagam on the carbon, if you do a patumah, it's only an isser. Okay, so we want to you don't want to do the isser, but you don't need to be mater. That doesn't have to be hutter. It doesn't have to become that this is totally permissible. If your hold tumah is, but if you hold that there's a problem with the carbon, we're doing a patumah, so you have to hold tumah as hutra b'tzibur. That means that it becomes like there's no issue anymore. Otherwise, you can have, even if you get around the isser, there's still going to be a problem with the carbon. Okay. Zok the Gemara. The top of Zayin Amrav. Amrav Sheshes. So where do I get off saying that? How do I know that tumah is only dechuya b'tzibur? Someone was standing and he was bringing his minchas ha'omer. Kohen was bringing the minchas ha'omer. V'nitmes biyadi, and the mincha became tamei. Again, now we're not talking about the kohen becoming tamei. The carbon became tamei. Omer. So he says to someone else, and he tells them, Omer. He says that it became tamei. And they bring another minchas ha'omer. V'yemein sham elihi. But if this is all that they got, then Oimrim Lai, the Kahanim tell them, have a pikach, be smart, be shtoik, and keep quiet, and continue doing your avodah. We don't want people to learn that, people to think, oh, you're allowed to do a betuma. They'll think a carbon yachid could bring betuma. So shtoik, keep quiet. Katanimia says Sheshes. What do you see from this brisa? You see, you bring another carbon in its stead. If tumah was hutra b'tzibur, then just bring it. No need to bring another one. Must be tumah dechuyi b'tzibur. Oh, k'shmakaraya Amar Nachman, Maydina heicha deika shirayim la'achila. I agree with you. You see, tumah hutra b'tzibur is only going to allow the carbon to be brought, but you're not allowed now to eat the carbon. So in a situation where there's shirayim, like in the case of minchas ha'omer, where only the kamitza is brought and the rest of it is eaten, but now you're not going to be able to eat it because it's tummy. So let's bring another one that's not going to be tummy. Second to the last line in the wide lines on the top of Rashi. The carbon tzibur carved betuma, even though a carbon tzibur is brought betuma, ain't a nechal betuma. You can't eat it betuma because I'm in Barak Ketzat Soilin. Ubemincha hanikmetzes. So therefore, by a mincha where you do kamitza to, you take off a part, and that part's brought on the mizbech. We agree that you want to do the rest b'tahara, so therefore, so you can eat the rest of that carbon. Okay, first raya. Meisvei has more challenges from a brisa or a Tosefta. Makriv, if someone was standing to be makriv, minchas parim ve'ilim ukvasim. A minchas is called minchas nesachim, a mincha that went along with either the parim, elim, or kvasim. V'nitmes b'yaden became the mincha became tam in his hand. Omer umevin acher stachta yimein shamalihi omer lehavi pikach ushtoik. So these minchas nesachim were oilis. So there's no shirayim left over here. So here, why are we bringing something else? There's no issue of shirayim. My lav says that the Gemara, parim elam ukvasim dechag. Aren't we talking about parim elam and kvasim that were brought on Sukkos, meaning that they were karbanis tzibur, and therefore they should have been if you hold like Rav Nachman, they're hutra b'tzibur. So what's the issue with bringing the minchas nesachim? Why are we looking for another one? Just bring a petuma. So it's a raya that tumah is dechuya b'tzibur. Rav Nachman loy. When we're not talking about kabbalah tzibur here. Parim is par of avodah zara. We're talking about a par that's being brought for an sin of avodah zara. Because this par of avodah zara is of the tzibur. It's an oila. And the avagav the tzibur, who even though it's a carbon tzibur, Kivan the lekviyale zman, since it doesn't have a set time, mahadrinan. So we're going to go and find. He agrees. Not every carbon sibur is hutra b'tzibur. It's got to be kviyale zman. It's got to have a set time. You can't do it at a different time. So, being that this is kviyale zman, mahadrinan, we got to find another one. Elim. What's the Elim referring to? That's talking about the Eilish shel Aaron. This is talking about the aisle of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. The Avagav, the Kviyale Zman, even though it has a set time, Kivan the Yachidhu, this is his own carbon, Mahadrinan. I agree that in this scenario, we're going to be Mahadir to find another mincha that is Tahar. Now, Taisus is a bit bothered over here. Second Taisus is like, one second. Even the Yachid carbon Shabbos. Listen, you're going to bring this on Shabbos. If Yom Kippur fell out on Shabbos, you're going to bring it. And therefore, it's also going to be a considered a carbon sibur to be deicha tuma. Afilu tuma de gavri, even a tuma de gavri, meaning even if the kohen gadol became tummy. Mihu loy hutra by tuba ela dechuyi. So what's shot here that we're considering it dechuya, not hutra? Even the yachid kamaisi, since a individual is bringing it. Now, Fraktes, I don't get it. The Tamali, Vakulmi Krainafki. This is all on that from the same pasuk in Paraketz Atzalim. Vaydar Moshe's Moed Hashem Hakosov Kava Moed Echad Lekulan. The Torah gives you one time for all of them. So the Fraktes is Ma'ishna the Yeshman Shehutra Ben Tuma the Yeshman Techuya. So why are some Mahutra and some Techuya? Why are you going to tell me the Isle of Yom Kippur, which is in the same parsha, is only Hutra, is only Techuya when everything else is Hutra? Yeshlemer Lamand Amar Tuma Heteri Bekulu Hutar Tuma Midiraisa. Avada, according to Nachman, this carbon is also Hutra B'tzibur. El Midirabanan Gazru Ahu Dahavi Carbon Yachid. Since it's a carbon yachid, and therefore it may look like people will think, oh, this is just a carbon yachid, so then every yachid is going to be hutra b'tzibur. So memela, they're mahader on a tahira. Gishmak. So they're all dechuya midiraisa. So again, Tais is saying a side here that this, even though the Gemara says the avagav the kviyale zman, even the yachru mahadrinan, not that's a din derabanan. Midiraisa avada tuma is hutra b'tzibur. There's no chiluk, but since it belongs to a yachid, therefore Chazal were machmir. Okay, now back to that Mishnah Kvasim. What are we talking about? The kaves haba im ha'omer. We're talking about the kvasim that were brought with the minchas ha'omer. The ika shirayim lachila. So here you'll have shirayim that need to be eaten. Rashi says, "V'kaves haba im ha'omer k'dechsiv va'asisam b'yam ha'nifchem es ha'omer." Like you should make on the day that you bring the omer. But he minchas kvasim dektani la b'minchas nesachim kabar. So that's not a minchas nesachim. A minchas nesachim is an oila. The koli that's brought up totally on his back. El b'minchas ha'omer atzmei abba imay v'nekmatzes v'sher nachalin. Okay, so Rav Nachman explains that this brisa is not talking about your regular carbon sibur or a mincha of a carbon sibur. We're either talking about menachas of a Parvi the Zara, which is like Kviyale Zman, the Parvi Isle of the Kohen Gadol, which is brought by Yachid, and the Minchas Ha'omer, which is not a Minchas Nesachim, where there are Shirai. Gewalt. Okay, that was our second challenge. Let's go for a third. Meisvei Dam Shenitma V'Zarkoi B'Shoigig Hortza B'Mezid Loy Hortza. If you have dam, blood, of a carbon that became tummy, if it was and you resurrect it, you did the zrika. If you did a b'shegeg hurtza, the tzitz will be maratza. Ritzui means that it makes it desirable. That's lashon of ritzui. That means it's accepted before Hashem. Like nirtza, at the end of the seder, we ask that our tefillah should our seder should be nirtza, should be desired by Hashem. Ritzei, we say by the avodah. By avodah, there's an inyan of ritzei, of being desirable, being wanted, like reitza, nirtza, hurtza. So the tzitz, the halach is that the tzitz, if a carbon is brought and the carbon was tamei, the tzitz is meratza. The tzitz allows that to be the tzitz the tzitz was a piece of gold that was on the Kohen Gadol's forehead that had this. It says Kodesh Lashem, and the pasuk tells us that we'll discuss if the Kohen Gadol has to be wearing it or not. But the tzitz is maratza on tumah. So if a carbon is brought to tumah, the tzitz takes care of that. The fact that there's a tzitz takes care of that problem. Okay. Now this brisa says that dam shnitma v'zarkai. If they did zrikas adam with blood that was tummy, b'shoigeg, if it was done b'shoigeg, means you weren't aware of it, then hortza. The tzitz is maratza. B'meizid, but if it was done intentionally, then lehurtza. Says Rashi, b'meizid lehurtza. V'av b'shat tzitz maratza. About it works. The tzitz doesn't make. There's no chiluk of shoigeg and meizid. But konsu rabbanan. The rabbanan made a knas. Shalei yehi basar nechel, that you're not allowed to eat the basar. Aval bailim miyu nischapru. Avada the bailim got a kapara. We don't want you to bring another carbon. If a maisa it worked, and you're going to bring another carbon, so you didn't need to bring that carbon, so that's called bring chulun azara. The midiraisa chazi about the midiraisa this worked. Umiyu shamin minei the lav heterhi. But what do you see from here? That it's not heter, meaning it's not a free for all. You can't just bring it. If you could have, if there was another option, meaning if you weren't Zerek the Dam yet, then Chazal would have told you they would have told you to bring another carbon. So you see that it's not Hutra. Says the Gemara, so that's a kasha on Rav Nachman that says that Tumah is Hutra b'tzibur. Answers the Gemara, Kitanya hi de Yochid. That price is not talking about a carbon tzibur, it's talking about a carbon Yochid. And Enachanami, I agree that a carbon, it's not, Tumah is only Hutra b'tzibur, not Tumah, there's no Tumah Hutra b'Yochid. Okay. Tashema, now we bring a raya. Alma hatzitz miratza. What does the tzitz work for? Al hadam, b'al habasar, b'al hachelav, shenitma, bein b'shogeg, bein b'mezid, whether it was by mistake or whether it was intentional, bein ba'inus, bein b'ratzain, whether it was accidental, or whether it was done willingly, bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur, whether it was yachid or tzibur. V'i sakadai dechtuma. Now, if you hold Tumah Hutra B'tzibur, Lamali L'Ritzuye, who needs Ritzui? What does it Bryce mean? Bein B'yachid, Bein B'tzibur. If Tumah is Hutra B'tzibur, then you don't need the Tzitz to be Maratza. Tzitz means the Maratza when you did something wrong. You brought a carbon B'tumah. But if Tumah is Hutra B'tzibur, then you don't need the Tzitz. Shtarke Kasha. Let's take a look at the Rashi. Bein B'tzibur. From the fact that you need the tzitz to be meratza by a carbon tzibur, shemamina lav heter hu. So you see that's not heter. Uma ben yachid letzibur. Shayachid ein tumas haguf nitche etzloi. Now there's a difference between a yachid and a tzibur. By a yachid, tumas haguf is not nitche etzloi. That means if a person was a zav or mitzvah, it's not going to work. Sheina tzitz meratza al tumas haguf. V'shel tzibur nitche nitches tumas haguf etzlam. By a carbon tzibur, it will be nitche. V'loy al yedei tzitz. Shel tzibur nitches tumas haguf etzlam v'loy al yedei tzitz. Mi yushamina minei d'midbay tumas basar v'aydim b'tzibur tzitz l'ritz yeshma mina tumas haguf shenitches etzlam b'kushi nitches. V'chol kama d'matzanin lahaduri atahar madrina. If you tell me you need the tzitz to be meratza on these karbanas, so then that means it's only dechuya, because if it was hutra, you wouldn't need the tzitz to be maratza. So says the Gemara, Amlachar Nachman, Kikatanya tzitz maratza al yachid. You got to use like a knife here to chop up this brisa. That when it says al mam tzitz maratza, it's referring to everything until it gets to till the tzibur. It means yachid. Okay. So why does it say tzibur in the brisa? So Rashi explains second line in the wide lines. But tzibur ach katani. When it says tzibur, it's going on what's kosher. Sha'af shel tzibur kosher. V'lei dei tzitz el heteru etzlei. Okay. By same alternatively, you could even say we're talking about the tzitz. You need to tzitz miratza b'tzibur, b'hanach like filas man. You need it for karbonet that don't have a set time, like we said on top. A parave zara is a carbon tzibur, doesn't have a set time. There you'll need the tzitz to be miratza because he agrees there it's not hutra. Okay, fact, another kasha. V'meisri. V'nasa Aaron as avoyna kodeshim. This is the pasuk. Aaron will carry the sin of the kodshim. That's the tzitz being meratza. What sin do we need the tzitz to be meratza for? What sin is it carrying? Pigol. We're worried about pigol. Pigol means that you did an avodah with the mind, with the thought that you were going to do it chutz l'mekaymai and in the wrong spot. So then harikvan emar le'yirotza. There says it's not going to work. Noiser, which means you're thinking about eating it after the time chutz l'zmanoi. Harikvan emar le'yichoshem. There says it's not going to work. So so what could we be talking about? We're talking about Tumah, and why would it make sense to talk about Tumah? Because I know Tumah shehutra mechlala b'tzibur. Tumah already has a kula, because we know Tumah is hutra b'tzibur. Since Tumah has a kula b'tzibur, so then I'll apply this pasuk to talking about Tumah, even that by a yachid. What do you see from here, though? That Tumah hutra b'tzibur, the kasha of sheishes. So this is a kasha of sheishes. Here, the Bryce is clearly learning that Tumah that Tumah is hutra b'tzibur. Says the Gemara. Enachanami, we're on Zayin Beis Tanoyi. It's a machlokes Tanoyim. Titanya, we learned in a Bryce. Tzitz bein sheyeshnei al mitzchay, bein she'enei al mitzchay, miratza. Where does the Kohen Gadol have to be wearing the tzitz for it to have this power of being miratza, of working for karbanas that were brought b'tumah? So Reb Shimon says, yeah, as long as the tzitz is around, it's fine. Dear Reb Shimon. While it's on him, miratza. If it's not on him, ain't miratza, then it doesn't work. What are you talking about? The Kohen Gadol b'yachiach on Yom Kippur, when he was wearing his 4 begadim, doing the avodah lefnei v'lefnim, he was not wearing, he didn't have the tzitz on him, and it would be miratza if something happened, and it was betuma. Leave Rabbi Yehuda, leave that alone, because you don't have to come on to the tzitz on Yom Kippur when he's only dealing with karbanis where everything's a carbon tzibur. So the tzitz of avada it's tumas hutra b'tzibur. I don't need to come on to the tzitz. So that's clear. Rabbi Yehuda as a holds that Tumah Hutra b'tzibur. Zok Gemara Michlal. Reb Shimon Savar Tumah Dechuyi b'tzibur. So I see from here that Tumah is Dechuyi b'tzibur. That's what Reb Shimon's opinion is. Now we have this machlokes of Tumah Hutra b'tzibur and Tumah Dechuyi b'tzibur. We started as machlokes of Sheishes and Reb Nachman. We now have a machlokes Tanaim, Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda. Zok the Gemara. Amar Abayi. Rashi says this is a mulsal b'pnei api nafshei with Frusha B'Klai to explain the machlokes between Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda. Amar Abayi. B'shenishbar hatzitz. If the tzitz broke, the kudamali pligi d'lei miratza. Everybody agrees it's not going to work. Ki pligi d'tali b'sichsa. What if it's on a hook? It means the Kohen Gadol is not wearing it. The kudamali pligi. Reb Yehuda savar. The pasuk says al metzach v'nasa. So the pasuk actually says, Rashi brings the pasuk. Vayal metzach Aaron, it's on the forehead of Aaron. V'nasa Aaron is avin hachalishim, and Aaron will carry the sin of the kodshim. So he darshins al metzach. If it's on his forehead, v'nasa, then he can carry the sin. If you Shimon Aimer savar tamid l'rotzin l'fnei Hashem, he darshins the fact that it says tamid, constantly. It's always l'rotzin l'fnei Hashem to be meratza before Hashem. My tamid ilay metavid al mitzvah. It's always on his forehead. Is that possible? He's not going to use the restroom. Doesn't need. He's going to need to take a nap, so he's not going to always be wearing it. Ella. So what does tamid mean? Ella tamid miratza. Dash on the next word. It's tamid miratza. It's always going to act as ritzui. That means he always has to be on his mind. He can't be mesiach das. Person has to constantly, be checking with his tefillin, because you don't want to be mesiach das. You don't want to be doing hasach das means chek v'kalas reish. You're not going to be joking around with your tefillin. You got to remember that your tefillin are on you, so you got to be mamashresh b'tefillah. And how does he know that? Kal v'chaver mitzitz Ma tabachas amralf. Ma tzitz she'en by elas kar achas. The tzitz only has one Shem Hashem. It says Kodesh Lashem. Amr the Torah says Al Mitzchay Tamid. You have to constantly remember. You have to always be mindful of it. Shlei Seich Dadim Imenu. Tefillin Sheish Bahen Askaris Harei. It actually has 21 Askaris. Alachas Kama V'Kama. So certainly you can't be Misiach Das of it. Now Taisus is like 1 second over here. Is this a serious Kal V'Chomer? Tembeli. Livrach. They have a very strong pircha. Malat says Sheken Hashem Ubagoli. The Shem Hashem is open. It's written. It's open. Torah Tefillin where it's open. It's covered with leather. The Ein L'Tar Zachanami Ksiv Shakai B'Tulin. Yeah, but you also have the Shem Shakai by Tulin. So maybe you have the Shin Dalet and Yud Shin on the Tulin and Dalet in the back and the Yud on your Shalyat. So you also have the Shem Hashem on your Tefillin. So Taisa says that's not a good kasha. It's not really written. The davka shin shel tefillin halacha meshmesina. The only thing that's actually written is the shin. Aval dalid yud loy. They're not really written. Va'oid betzitz ika shem hamiyuchad ben dalid oisius. It's a shem yurke vavke. The chamer tvei much more chamerdik. So this is nearly the in the kavachemer de'eresa. This is gomer de'eresa. It's not a real kavachemer. El medrabanan v'hachi kamer nina mit the ika chumra tvei betzitz. Even though there's a chumr we find by the tzitz, because the farish become like and keeping the ika betul and tzar chashivas. Zeh tvei sheish ben askaris harbe svirahu sheminadin yesh lachem l'takim l'mashrish behen kolsha. Saying, I agree. Of course, you can't learn not a real kavachemer, but there's an inyan to learn from here, and therefore, if the tefillin does have a chashivas that it has many more askaris, so therefore it would make sense that the chacham would make such a halacha. Okay, Hashem, we'll continue tomorrow night.